New Year's is, of course, the time when we often make resolutions to improve ourselves in some way, to eat healthier, to exercise more, to read more. And of course, these resolutions can be a very valuable thing. Oftentimes, of course, by February, they've gone by the wayside, but it can be good to take that moment and to resolve to do something new. At the start of this new year, however, the Church, in her wisdom, does something interesting by giving us this great feast dedicated to Our Lady, Mother of God, on this day that we celebrate. The Church on this day does not have us focus on making resolutions. Rather, the Church has us focus on relationships. We're given the image of Mary holding the baby Jesus. This relationship between Mary and her child, between ourselves and her child, between ourselves and Mary. It's all about relationships today for the Church. Although, of course, self-improvement is important, the Church on this day doesn't have us focus on that. Rather than focus on self-improvement, we focus on the way that God has come so close to us in the Incarnation. Today, as we celebrate Mary being Mother of God, it's a reminder for us of how close God has come to us in the person of Jesus Christ. Now, in the Church, we have what we call dogmas, which are centrally held beliefs, something that are kind of non-negotiable for us as Catholics. And there are several dogmas that have to do with Our Lady, have to do with Mary. I'd like to look at just 3 of them this evening and talk about how really I think they set us up well when we consider these dogmas for the new year, how they fill us with encouragement, how ultimately these dogmas protect this important belief, the belief in the Incarnation, of how close God has come to each and every one of us. We can start, of course, with the truth that we celebrate today, Mary, Mother of God. This title is so important, and this title for Our Lady was defined at the Council of Ephesus in 431. It was kind of a time of great debate in the Church. Can we call Mary the Mother of God or not? Although this dogma, this belief, seems to be about Mary, it really protects something important and central to Jesus. Jesus, we believe, was always both God and a human being in one person. Jesus was never having a time when he was not God. Therefore, we have to believe that Mary is the Mother of God if we want to believe that Jesus, being born, was already God. And so at the Council of Ephesus, they defined this article of faith, this title for Mary that we celebrate this evening, Mary, Mother of God. Again, this belief protects or defines or defends what we believe about Jesus, that Jesus was not just half God, half a human being. Jesus was fully God and fully human. And this means for us that God has come so close to us. God was born into a family, as we see in the nativity scene. God was held by his mother, Mary, in the person of Jesus Christ. He was fed. He had to grow up. Jesus Christ, in becoming a human being, has become like us in all things but sin. So this very central belief that Mary is Mother of God reminds us and protects for us our belief that God has come so close to us in the Incarnation. And as we start this new year, this is, of course, an incredible message of hope for us, that God is always with us. God knows all the things that we go through because Jesus was a human being. He's with us. He experiences all we go through, and he will never leave our side. Mary, the Mother of God. The next dogma or belief that we have about Mary, that I'd like to look at this evening at least, is the belief in the Immaculate Conception. Now, this was defined in the year 1850 or so by Pope Pius IX. And the Immaculate Conception is the belief that Mary was conceived without original sin. And this can, of course, seem a bit strange, kind of this concept, but let's unpack it quickly. So original sin can be described in various ways, and it's a hard thing to think about because how can a baby, when they're born, sin? They're incapable of sin. So when we talk about original sin, we need to recognize it's not the same sort of sin we're thinking about when we think that we commit a sin by lying, cheating, stealing, that sort of thing. What original sin means is that we are born into this world with a lack of something that we should have. And this lack is the life of God within our souls, this life of grace that God gives us, particularly at our baptism. So original sin then is being born into the world with a lack of something that we should have, which is the life of God that we come to have through Jesus Christ. And so the Immaculate Conception then holds that Mary was not born with original sin. She always had, from the moment of her conception, this life of God within her. Now, this doesn't mean that her life was easy, but it means that she was able to commit more fully to God's plan, that our yes to God's plan was even more fully realized, this perfect yes. And the Immaculate Conception is such a beautiful belief for us to hold. Oftentimes we think about God's salvation, that God comes and saves us from our mess. We kind of do something wrong, we make a mistake, and God swoops in through the person of Jesus Christ and sets everything right. That is true. God does do that for us. But the Immaculate Conception teaches us that God's grace goes before us. Even before Mary was capable of making a choice, God's grace, God's assistance went before her. And this, I think, is such an important and encouraging truth, that God's grace always precedes our action. We, of course, have our free will. We need to make choices. We need to make decisions. We need to act in the right way. But also, God's grace comes before us. So if we want to pray, if we have that desire to pray, and hopefully we go and do that, it's because God has already given us that grace to desire it. If we're looking to forgive someone or to serve in a new way, these are, of course, good intentions, but God's grace comes before us and assists us to make the choice to do the right thing. The Immaculate Conception then teaches us that God's grace precedes all our actions. We're not in this by ourselves. We're not there to kind of save ourselves by pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps, but rather God's grace always leads us and guides us. This, of course, is a very inspiring message for us as we begin the new year. We want to change, we want to make resolutions, but we don't rely on ourselves for this. We, of course, need to work, we need to make decisions, but God's grace comes before us. This is the truth that we learn in the Immaculate Conception. The Assumption of Our Lady is, of course, another central Marian dogma or statement of belief that we hold as Catholics. The Assumption was defined by Pius XII around 1950. The dogma of the Assumption holds that Mary, when she came to the end of her life, was assumed into heaven, body and soul. Mary, therefore, is already with God, in God's presence with her body. She already experiences what we all will experience when Jesus comes back and the dead are raised back to life. This is such an important dogma, and to think about its importance is helpful sometimes to consider when this declaration was made. 1950. The world had just passed through World War II. World War I was still fresh in people's minds. These terrible wars where the dignity of human persons, of the human body, was so degraded. The Immaculate, or the Assumption of Mary, teaches us about the importance of our body. As well, it teaches us about the future. Ultimately, these relationships of love that we have with God and one another do not end when we die. They continue after death, and we look forward to eternal life, not as sort of dismembered spirits floating around kind of on clouds up there, but having our bodies. We believe, as we say in the Creed, in the resurrection of the body. And Our Lady, in the Assumption, accepted or partook in this gift, this grace of Christ, first and foremost. And this is what we look forward to. This great dogma, then, of the Assumption points to our final end, that our bodies matter, that ultimately we look forward to eternal life in relationship with God and with one another. As we start the new year, then, let us certainly make resolutions. This is important. But let us also, as the Church points us, focus on our relationships, our relationship with God, our relationship with each other. In particular, as we start this new year with this great feast of Our Lady, let us focus on our relationship with Our Lady, that she ultimately has one mission: to bring Christ into the world, True devotion to Our Lady, a relationship with Our Lady, always leads us closer to Jesus. So as we begin this new year then, let us trust in the grace of God that comes before us, and let us, like Our Lady, say yes in a deeper way this year to God's plans for us.